Welcome to the Ed Bargy video series, a video series dedicated to the true science of motorcycles. In this episode, we'll be looking at the basic or standard racing line for several different types of turns. First, we will refresh a couple of the basics about racing lines. The five main components of a turn are the setup, the approach, the turning point, the apex, and the exit point. Also, the turn radius. A large radius line will have a higher potential cornering speed than a smaller radius. I like to use a simple 90-degree turn for basic race lines. This drawing shows a standard basic race line in red for a 90-degree corner. The basic line consists of a wide setup, a tight apex, and a wide exit, shown here in red. This wide, tight, wide configuration will allow the widest radius for the turn. Any variation from the wide, tight, wide line will require a smaller radius, as is shown in this example in the blue dotted line. This smaller radius of the non-standard line requires a slower mid-corner speed. The larger radius of the wide, tight, wide line allows a higher mid-corner speed. The higher mid-corner speed allows a higher average exit speed. This higher exit speed results in a higher terminal speed down the straightaway. The higher mid-corner speed also results in a higher approach speed and a higher entry speed, as you can see here. The higher approach speed allows later braking. These advantages of the wide, tight, wide line add up to better lap times. Let's look at a couple of different kinds of corners. The basic line for the S's or S-type turn is shown here. Most S turns have a very limited number of optional race lines that will be effective. The basic line is a very simple line. The main goal in an S turn is to straighten it out as much as possible. A straighter line, shown in blue, allows the racer to accomplish one or more of the following. 1. Take the shortest distance through the turn. 2. Carry a higher speed through the turn, or aggressively brake into the turn, and apply a substantial amount of throttle in the exit. The object is not to try to swoop or sweep the turn, as shown here in red. The red sweeping or swooping type line is a longer line, a longer distance through the turns. Also, it requires more right and left hand direction changes. It also requires more lean angle changes right and left than the simple blue line. Once again, these points result in a slower potential mid-corner speed and less potential for brake or acceleration into and out of the S's. All this results in a slower lap time. Now, let's look at a different kind of a turn. Let's look at what I call a bowl turn. These also have been called a horseshoe or a meander or a loop or what have you. But a bowl turn consists of a constant radius in a turn that goes about 180 degrees. It can be actually looked at as two 90-degree turns connected in the middle, or one long turn. The standard basic line will still be a variation of the wide, tight, wide line. The red line shows the entrance and deceleration area, whereas the green line shows the exit and re-accelerating area. The main difference between a bowl and a 90 is the length of time and length of distance at the apex. As you can see here, the apex is about 90 degrees or almost half of the turn. Where an apex for the 90-degree turn is only a few feet long, the standard or basic line will have probably the shortest time that you can spend in this turn, because it is the small orbit, the smaller radius turn. You could go wide all the way around that turn, but then it'd be the long way around and leaving the door open on the inside, as shown here in red. There are some alternate lines that will have some benefit. These will be discussed in detail in another video. The standard line is still a good starting point when working on race lines, especially in a bowl turn. Now let's look at a basic line for an increasing radius turn. Most increasing radius turns have a direction change of about 180 degrees. They can be looked at as two 90-degree turns connected. Sometimes there will be a small straight sections between the two halves, as shown here. The basic line would be similar for both configurations. The first half of the turn is a smaller radius, and the second half is the larger radius. A basic line is shown here in blue. Here we break down the turn into its components. The first thing to notice is the length of the apex is similar to a bowl turn. It is substantially longer than a standard 90-degree turn. The actual distance at apex will vary from turn to turn. The object of the standard line is to get a lot of the direction change completed in the entrance of the turn, shown by the red line. This will allow the racer to start to roll on the throttle just as the radius starts to open up in the second half, shown by the green line. This will give a good drive off the turn. Once again, the basic line for this type of turn is a good starting point when working on lines for an unfamiliar track. This basic line is a good race line for the smaller, lower torque bikes in most situations. There are a couple of alternate lines, but those will generally be most beneficial for larger, high horsepower, higher torque bikes. Alternate lines for an increasing radius will be covered in more detail in another video. Now let's look at a decreasing radius. The decreasing radius is one of the types of turns that gives many new racers the most difficulty. A decreasing radius turn usually has about 180 degrees of direction change, similar to a bowl or an increasing radius. Once again, it can be looked at as two 90-degree turns of different radiuses connected together. And once again, in some cases, it may have a short straight connecting the two halves. The basic line will be similar for both configurations. Here we will draw a standard basic line in blue. You first will notice that it has a slight different configuration than the basic line for a bowl or an increasing radius. Since it's a decreasing radius, more factors come into play. Notice the line is actually two basic wide lines joined in the middle. These will give the potential for the best entry speed, best mid-corner speed, and the best exit speed in both sections. Also notice that the wide exit of the first half gives the racer a nice wide setup for the second half. Next, we will look at the components of a decreasing radius line. The line is actually a double apex line. This would be an alternate line for most other turns, but here it is a good basic line. You can easily see the wide setup, the tight apex, and the wide exit offers the best entry speed and mid-corner speed in the first half of the turn, shown by the red line. What is important to notice here is that the racer is still decelerating in the exit of this section, shown in the red line. Normally, if it was just a simple 90-degree turn, the racer would be accelerating in the exit. But since the next section of the turn is slower, he needs to continue slowing down. This may also require some trail braking skills, since you'll be slowing down and possibly braking while still leaned over. The result of this will be the slowest area of the turn is between the two sections, as shown here in blue. The racer slows down to that point, then accelerates from it. The line for the second half of the turn is shown in green. The racer would generally be accelerating here. Notice this section is also a basic tight wide line, which will give good mid-corner speed and a good drive-off for the turn. There are a couple of minor variations which may be of some benefit in some instances. They will be covered in another video. So far we have looked at the basic lines for several simple turns. Advanced lines or alternate lines, like we said before, will be covered in another video. Thanks for watching.